What's it like being disciplined in this way? Chris Knight, now aged 20, first came to Greenfields, then called Les Chênes, when he was 13. He said with hindsight he doesn't think the Grand Prix system can be justified.
We used to say to them, you know, oh, you can't do this to us. Like, we couldn't believe it that they were keeping us that locked up for that amount of time. But, you know, I mean, we were constantly being told, you know, that we didn't have human rights over here and things like that. So we just accepted it. I mean, with hindsight in mind, I don't think locking 14-year-olds up for that amount of time in solitary or even in isolation is right. I mean, from what I've read on the subject, isolation and solitary confinement should be used as like a short-term measure to stop like someone from doing harm to themselves or someone else, especially in children anyway.
Well, Chris is now in Lamoille. Later in the programme, we'll be hearing him compare his experiences in Greenfields with his time in the young offenders wing of the adult prison. He's told BBC Jersey he's found life easier at Lamoille, and a big part of that is the strong relationships he says he has with prison officers. He says the mutual respect between offenders and staff at Lamoille is a far cry from the difficult relationships children had with Greenfield staff.
I looked at some of them and I just thought, you know, you're here because you want to have a power trip, like, if you know what I mean. They just annoyed me, really.
What gave you the impression that they were on a power trip at Greenfields?
Some of them were just, you know, some of the, like, the regime they had in place there at one point, like with the strike system, you know, certain members of staff would just give you strikes for the most stupid reasons.
What kind of things?
Like swearing and things like that. It's just little things, you know, and, you know, I mean, one member of staff, it was a case of if you didn't do it the way that she asked you to, then, you know, she'd just go off on one, and I just laughed, really, because I just found it so pathetic, really.
Were they very quick to anger at Greenfields, it sounds?
I'd say so, yeah. It was very much a case of if you didn't do exactly what they said, then you were going to end up in the pits, or you get strikes or various other means of discipline that they enforced.
Did you spend much time in the pits?
Yeah, I spent quite a bit of time in the pits when I was at the Shen.
How did you feel when you were on your own for bad behaviour? Did you feel that it made you want to behave yourself to get back into the more privileged parts of the regime, or did you sort of stew there a bit and get more and more furious?
It depends really on what you've been put down there for. I mean, there was times when I was put down there for, I think one of the times when I was put in the pits when it was the Grand Prix regime was because I moved the table up against the wall, and that was one of the last times I was in there, and I'd had enough by that point. I didn't really care what the staff said to me. I had no plans to try and get on track or anything like that. But then there was other times, you know, like when we were like smashing windows and things like that. When they put us in the secure unit for like long periods of time, that used to make me think. You know, I did become depressed and started self-harming and things like that. Because I was only 14 at the time as well. So, I mean, to spend that amount of time on your own, it does start playing with your head.
Chris Knight, who has been in the criminal justice system since he was 14, talking to BBC Jersey's Susie Steer-Fowler about the Greenfields he remembers when the Grand Prix system was being used. Chris freely admits he was one of the young offenders who was frequently isolated in the pits. He left Greenfields in 2005, and since then the place has changed, been modernised, refurbished, made more secure, and its disciplinary systems have changed too. The Grand Prix Chris was describing is a thing of the past, but what is the legacy of such a system on practice at the centre nowadays? At Greenfields today, the Grand Prix system is no longer used. Young people continue their education in the two classrooms, equipped with computers. There's a television room, a gymnasium and state-of-the-art exercise room with cycling, running and rowing machines. Youngsters and staff eat together in the dining room, and they're encouraged to help with the cooking. The residents are locked into their rooms each night at 9 o'clock and, as it is a secure unit, they are not at liberty to come and go as they please. Michael Bowyer is the current stage manager. He's a registered social worker and senior practitioner in mental health. He's trained in cognitive behaviour therapy and family therapy. He trained as a human rights advocate in the UK. He's worked in Guernsey. He's also an investigator of alleged abuse in care homes in the UK. Now, BBC Jersey's Sarah Scriven asked him about the principles which underpin the system at Greenfields today.
Well, the guiding principle is best practice, really. The centre itself, or a member of our staff team, is a member of the Secure Accommodation Network, and while we adhere to national minimum standards for all of our standards within this house, we also refer to current research in how other secure establishments fulfil their role. And largely this is overseen by myself. Obviously I have my own social work code of ethics, work in an anti-oppressive manner, and ensure that the welfare of the children is paramount. Very largely my principle for working here is care not key.
How much would you say that the way that the centre is run today is in response to the situation which existed at the former Greenfield Centre, formerly Le Chêne, which had the system of penalties known as the Grand Prix system?
I'm not sure it was a direct response to it. I think there was a recognition that change was needed, and people such as Simon Bellwood and myself, social workers with a wide range of experience, were recruited for that purpose, in strong recognition that we were much more au fait with practices in keeping with UK standards, and certainly in my case Guernsey standards, and there was a strong recognition of this from the senior managers of the Children's Executive.
How does your approach differ then in dealing with, say, troublesome or violent young people?
We work in a much more humanistic way with young people, so we develop good, strong working relationships with them. We have a number of therapeutic interventions that enable youngsters to reflect on their journey to here, however that came about, and try to make better choices about what they're going to do when they leave here. We also work very closely with youngsters in developing their own inner skills, their own inner strengths. So we try to treat this placement in Greenfields as an opportunity to help them leave here with perhaps the ability to make better choices, and certainly some skills that they wouldn't have had when they came in here.
So how would you respond in the case where, for example, a young person does become violent in a situation?
Well, hopefully the therapeutic crisis intervention model that we use has a very large proportion of the model, which is a de-escalation and talking process. There is a physical element right on the end of it, so we are all trained in restraining children if necessary, if they are presenting as a risk to themselves or others. But to a large extent we rely very much upon the